In the autumn of 2000, I was literally brought to my knees while alone in a hotel room. I could barely breathe. My chest felt like it was in a vice. I was sweating profusely and soon was informed that I had had a heart attack. But something was dreadfully wrong with this picture. I don't smoke or drink. I'm not overweight. I exercise every day, and I've done so for over 25 years. I watch what I eat, I meditate, I do what I love, and I love what I do. I have a great marriage. I have wonderful children. I don't do heart attacks. That's for other people who live their lives in such a way as to invite in heart attacks, not me, not Dr. Wayne Dyer. Yet there I was, in the hospital, with monitor wires attached all over my upper body, and with an IV in my arm. In 3 days, I would have an angiogram procedure. For the first 24 hours, I lay there in a state of shock and disbelief. It is called denial. I felt sorry for myself. I refused to acknowledge that such a thing could happen to me. I was, to be honest, scared to death. After that first day, I began to rehash what I had written that you are about to hear. I reminded myself of the title. There's a spiritual solution to every problem. And this surely was a problem. I remembered that I could bring the energy of spirit right here to this hospital room. By doing so, I could actually turn this thing around. The facts were the facts. My heart had been injured. Now it was up to me. I am not this body. I am a spiritual being, eternal, always connected to God. I could shift my awareness to being the observer rather than the victim. It was as if the light came on in a room of darkness. I felt the presence of a higher, faster healing energy almost immediately. I began to be cheerful rather than morose. I circulated around the cardiac ward, attempting to cheer up those who were much worse off than myself. I looked for what was right about that place and experienced gratitude for everything my senses witnessed. On Monday morning, the angiogram revealed a blockage in one artery that may have been a part of my physical anatomy since birth. My heart was strong and the damage was minimal. A stent was inserted in the blocked artery after a balloon poked out the offending plaque. I am now back to my normal exercise and work routine. I decided to share this information with you to illustrate how a seemingly insurmountable problem has a spiritual solution readily accessible. It worked. Trust me. I, Wayne Dyer, know from first-hand experience. Can you make a flower grow? Probably your first response is, such a simple thing to do. Plant a seed, provide sunlight and water, and in time, a flower will emerge. However, I am inviting you to consider who or what generates the life that makes a flower grow. Who or what causes the flower seed to blossom and the tiny embryo to become a human being? Who or what grows our fingernails and beats our heart even as we sleep? What is this force that keeps the planets in place and hurls our world through the galaxy at a breathtaking speed? These questions have been asked for as long as humans have had the ability to contemplate their existence. Spirit is what I have chosen to call the invisible energy, which is the source and sustenance of life on this planet. This force, no matter the name we give it, can solve every problem that we encounter. Recognizing the availability of an invisible force that can be put to use in solving a problem requires overcoming a great deal of our early training. Do you believe there's only one kind of power or knowledge, which relies on your sensory or intellectual faculties to solve problems? Most of us have been taught this is true. This is a conditioned attitude of non-recognition of our divine connection. In this state of non-recognition, we believe that medicines, herbs, surgery, and doctors are responsible for all healing, or that improving one's financial picture involves the exclusive application of working hard, studying, and sending out resumes. Patanjali described a kind of knowledge or power that is not accessed solely through the material world. Recognition that this power exists and is always available is the first step of activating it. As physical beings, we can make a flower grow, but if we are thoughtful, we realize that we cannot even begin to unravel the mystery of the invisible force that initiates life. Yet it is in this omnipotent spiritual world that we find the solutions to all of our problems. I think it is important to see spiritual as a part of physical rather than separate these two dimensions of our reality. It is all one. Spirit represents that which we cannot validate with our senses. The real key to understanding spiritual is this idea of our inner world and our outer world. One world, yet two unique aspects of being human. I have a friend who compares the physical to a light bulb and the spiritual to electricity. When I refer to spiritual, I do not intend it to be synonymous with religious. Religion is orthodoxy, rules, and historical scriptures maintained by people over long periods of time. Generally, people are born into religions and raised to obey the customs and practices of that religion without question. These are customs and expectations from outside of the person and do not fit my definition of spiritual. Spirituality is from within. My personal understanding of spiritual practice is that it is a way of making my life work at a higher level and of receiving guidance.
There's a sacred sound that lives beneath all sound. It is not loud, it is not urgent, and it is not outside of you. It is the still hum of your eternal being, a vibration so gentle, so constant, that it is often drowned out by the noise of your thinking, the clutter of your conditioning, and the hurried chase of your ego. But it is always there, waiting. Like an ancient friend who never left, just quietly sat beside you, trusting you'd one day remember to listen. This is the sound of silence. Not the absence of noise, but the presence of truth. You were not born into noise. You arrived as silence. The infant does not seek to be impressive, clever, or approved of. The infant is simply here. No story, no shame, no schedule. Just being, just presence, just soul. And it is in that state, untouched by past, unseduced by future, that the divine speaks clearest, not through thunder or spectacle, but through the quiet whisper that arises when the mind finally surrenders its grasp and the heart opens to the eternal. You have been told to seek answers. You have been taught to strive, to push, to acquire information and validation and success. But the greatest truths will not be shouted through effort. They will be revealed in stillness. Not because they are hiding, but because you are running. Running from moment to moment, from task to task, from thought to thought, from self to self. And yet, everything you are running toward is resting peacefully inside the very silence you keep avoiding. The world teaches us that silence is empty, but silence is not empty. Silence is full. It holds the totality of wisdom, the blueprint of every sacred life, the knowing that existed before language ever did. Silence is the space where your soul sings without needing to be heard. It is where your fear dissolves, not because it is solved, but because it is seen through. Silence reveals that there was never anything to solve, only illusions to let go of. We confuse activity with purpose. We confuse noise with value. And so we shout our affirmations, we obsess over fixing ourselves, we perform our spirituality like a show. But the soul is not impressed by performance. The soul does not clap when you look awakened. It only smiles when you are. An awakening is not a performance. It is a return, a homecoming to that original silence where you are not this role, not this pain, not even this name. You are awareness itself. In silence, you stop being a person with problems. You become a presence with power. Because the problems only exist in the theater of mind, and silence turns off the projector. Suddenly you realize the struggle was never out there. It was the noise you allowed in here. It was the commentary, the resistance, the narrative. And when the narrative pauses, so does the suffering. Not because the world changed, but because you stopped believing your thoughts were the world. When you begin to rest in silence, not as an escape, but as a return, you realize something extraordinary. That all your searching was holy, but unnecessary. You never had to become enough. You already were. You never had to find peace. You just had to stop fighting yourself long enough to feel it. You never had to be saved. Only reminded. We live in a society that glorifies answers but fears stillness. But stillness is the answer. Not a word, not a doctrine, not a formula, but a state of being. Stillness is the meeting point between you and God, where no translation is needed. No achievements, no apologies, No explanations, just presence, just truth, just you, stripped of all the noise you thought you needed to be loved. You may have believed that healing requires struggle, but healing is what happens when struggle ceases. Healing begins not when you try harder, but when you surrender deeper. It begins when you finally sit, not with an agenda, but with reverence. When you stop performing your pain and begin witnessing it. When you stop asking, how do I fix this? And begin asking, who is aware of this? Because in that question, something shifts. The pain becomes a cloud and you, the sky. Silence reminds you that you are not the storm. You are the space in which the storm appears. The emotions will rise and fall. The thoughts will dance and disappear. The stories will come and go. But who you are does not move. Who you are is not a wave. It is the ocean. And the ocean is never afraid of its waves. There is a divine intelligence that lives in you, not outside you, not above you, not later, but now. It does not speak in language, but in presence. It does not need convincing, it already knows. It is the voice that says, you are held, even when your mind says you are falling. It is the pulse that reminds you in every breath that you are enough simply because you are. And the more you listen, the less you chase. The more you feel it, the less you need. You do not need to yell at the universe to be heard. You only need to be quiet enough to hear it whisper back. It has always been whispering, but not into your ears, into your awareness. Not into your intellect, into your being. And the only thing that ever blocked the message was the belief that it should come in a different form. The mind says, give me proof. But the soul says, just feel. And when you stop needing your healing to look dramatic and instead let it feel sacred, you will know the answer was never far. It was right here. Underneath the noise, beneath the drama, beneath the grasping, the answer you seek is in silence. Because in silence, you become what you seek. You do not find peace. You remember that you are peace. And if you are brave enough to sit in that silence without your mask, without your resume, without your wounds, something astonishing begins to happen. The false self begins to fade. The roles begin to melt. The seeking begins to slow. And in the space that's left, a presence arises. Gentle, quiet, but unmistakable. It does not demand attention because it already has your love. It does not try to impress you because it is you. There is a rhythm to life that you cannot hear when you are shouting, but when you become quiet enough, the rhythm returns. It's the rhythm of breath, of grace, of nature. The rhythm of a heart that knows it is connected to something infinite. And in that rhythm, you do not have to force clarity. You do not have to demand purpose. You simply return to what you've always been aware, alive, whole. And the irony is, the more you silence the mind, the louder your soul becomes. Not in volume, but in truth. Not in noise, but in knowing. You become fluent in the language of the present. You begin to see God not as a distant judge, but as the quiet space between your thoughts. You begin to live less from story, more from stillness. Less from effort, more from essence. Let the world keep chasing noise. Let others fill their days with more opinions, more distractions, more labels. You return to the sacred. You return to the place where truth does not have to be explained, only felt. Where your worth is not earned, only remembered. Where your next step does not need to be mapped, only trusted. This is the gift of silence. It doesn't teach you what to think. It teaches you how to listen. And when you listen, truly listen, you hear something profound. Not a new instruction, not a divine commandment, but a remembering. A remembering of what you are beneath the personality. A remembering of the vast, limitless being who has always been whole. a remembering that life is not trying to test you, it's trying to reveal you. So stop waiting for the thunder. Stop demanding that the universe speak in your language. Learn to feel the message in the silence. And you'll realize you were never disconnected. You were just distracted. You were never the noise. You only believed in it. You only learned to identify with it the rushing thoughts, the echoing doubts, the applause and the criticism, the voices that told you who to be, how to perform, what to suppress, and what to fear. But underneath it all, you were the one who heard the noise, not the noise itself. And that which hears the noise is not disturbed by it. That is your essence. And it has never once left you. Silence is not something you create. It is what remains when all the clutter is released. It is what remains when you stop trying to control how you appear and instead allow yourself to be what you are. Silence is the space between judgment and acceptance, between fear and surrender, between the false identity and the true self. In silence, the veil lifts, not with effort, but with grace. And you see clearly not with the eyes, but with the soul. There is a sacred difference between reacting and responding. Reaction is the product of noise, of unconscious habit and conditioned emotion. Response is the fruit of silence. A person who lives in silence does not react from fear. They respond from love. They do not echo the world's chaos. They embody its stillness. They do not need to be loud to be powerful, because their presence speaks louder than any words ever could. The spiritual masters of this world, the ones who radiate peace, they are not empty of emotion. They are empty of illusion. They have stopped identifying with the noise in their head and started listening to the wisdom of the still place within. They are not above suffering. They are simply not ruled by it. They have made a home in the silence. And from that home, they bring light wherever they go. You have the same light. It is not lesser. It is not distant. It only asks that you slow down long enough to see it flickering beneath the rubble. There is a divine intelligence behind all of creation. The tree does not rush its growth. The sun does not force its rise. The river does not panic when the rocks appear. Nature moves in harmony because it does not resist its own unfolding. But we as humans have forgotten how to trust. We interrupt our own peace with mental commentary. We mistake urgency for importance. We judge ourselves by how fast we can move rather than how deeply we can listen. But when you return to silence, you return to nature, you return to the rhythm of the soul, which is slow, soft, eternal. You begin to trust again, not in outcomes, but in alignment. Not in control, but in connection. You realize that life is not a puzzle to be solved, but a presence to be felt. And the deeper you go into that presence, the less you need from the outside. Because wholeness is no longer an achievement, it's your starting point. You are not incomplete. You are not a mistake. You are not lost. You are a wave that forgot it belonged to the ocean. And silence is the place where the wave remembers. You do not need more effort. You need more surrender. You do not need to fix your life. You need to witness it without judgment. The ego will tell you to strive. The soul will ask you to rest. Because in resting, you come home. Let it be okay not to have an answer. Let it be okay to sit with the question. Let it be okay to drop the mask you've worn for so long that you forgot what your face looked like. You do not need to impress the divine. You are the divine. And God is not keeping score. God is waiting in the silence not to evaluate you, but to embrace you. There is no punishment in stillness, only revelation. You will not lose anything real by going silent. You will only lose the noise that was pretending to be real. You will only lose the false self, the one who needed to prove, to earn, to defend, to shout. The real self has no need for any of that. The real self is already whole, already enough, already divine, and it lives always in the silence. Listen not with your ears, but with your being. Listen to the spaces between the words. Listen to the breath between the thoughts. Listen to the presence behind the moment. This is where God lives. This is where truth lives. This is where you live when you finally stop trying to be someone and remember how to simply be. You have been seeking peace as if it were somewhere else. But peace is not a location. It is a return to your natural frequency. And you cannot return by running, only by stopping, only by letting go, only by releasing the belief that peace must be earned or that truth must be proven. Peace is not proven, it is felt. And it is felt in the moment when you become quiet enough to notice what has always been here. The past has a voice, the future has a voice. But neither voice belongs to now. And now is where your power lives. Now is where the soul breathes. Now is where healing happens. You do not heal by understanding the past. You heal by letting go of the need to drag it into the present. You do not awaken by fearing the future. You awaken by realizing that the present moment is eternal and nothing truly sacred can be missed from it. In silence, there is no comparison. There is no competition. There is no one to be better than, no one to be beneath. In silence, there is no role to play. There is only love, only presence, only truth. It is in silence that you remember the unshakable truth. You were never broken. You were simply buried under ideas that never belonged to you. The answer you seek is not louder than your pain. It is softer than your thoughts. It is not above you or beyond you. It is within you, waiting for you to stop pushing and start allowing. To stop asking what's next and start asking what's now, because what's now is where the divine is dancing. What's now is where the sacred breath of life is still singing you into existence. And it sings the same song to all of us. Be still. You are already home. You do not need more knowledge. You need less noise. The noise is not just in your environment, it's in your head. It's the static of a mind conditioned to fear stillness, to equate being with doing, and to see rest as laziness rather than reverence. But when you are silent, you begin to unlearn the false truths you were taught. You realize that everything you were chasing was born of the belief that you were not already whole. And that belief, not your circumstances, was the source of your suffering. The mind is loud because it is unsure. The soul is silent because it is certain. Certainty does not shout. Truth does not need volume. Real wisdom arrives like the sunrise, not with fanfare, but with radiance. It does not beg to be noticed. It simply illuminates. And silence is the place where this illumination becomes visible. Not outside you, within you. You have confused silence with absence. But silence is not the absence of sound, it is the presence of space. The space in which sound arises, dances, and dissolves. Just as you are not your thoughts, but the space in which thoughts appear. Just as you are not your body, but the awareness that watches the body age while the spirit remains ageless, you are the one who sees, the one who knows, the one who simply is. And this infinite presence cannot be harmed, cannot be diminished, cannot be lost. It can only be forgotten in noise. Let the silence teach you. Let it teach you that your wounds are not who you are, that your worth was never up for negotiation, that you do not need to climb a ladder to touch God, you only need to sit down and listen. The higher self does not live in the clouds, it lives in the breath, in the pause. In the moment you stop trying to be and simply become aware that you already are, every moment spent in silence is a homecoming, a return from exile, a reunion with the source that never left you, only waited patiently for you to remove the walls. You thought life abandoned you, but it didn't. You just forgot how to hear it. You mistook the silence for punishment. when it was actually an invitation. An invitation to stop, to breathe, to feel the divine frequency beneath the chaos. There is a holiness in quiet moments that the ego cannot comprehend because the ego thrives on noise. It defines itself by conflict, by identity, by motion. The ego says, be more, do more, prove more. But the soul whispers, you are. That's it. You are. Not what they said, not what you did, not what you feared. Just you are. That is the beginning of freedom. Not a transformation into something else, but a return to what has always been. When you learn to be still, you become intimate with the divine. Not through belief, but through being. You don't need a new belief system. You need an undisturbed moment with your own presence. That is where you meet God, not through dogma, but through awareness. Not through rituals alone, but through the reverence of attention. There is no temple more sacred than the present moment. No scripture more direct than your breath. You are not behind. You are not too late. You have not failed. These are stories written by the mind that does not yet trust the unfolding of life. But the soul has no calendar. It only has now. And in the now, there is no judgment, only clarity. There is no guilt, only understanding. There is no shame, only compassion. The silence knows this. It is not against you. It is holding you. Softly, constantly, waiting only for you to become still enough to feel it. There are seasons in your life when words will not be enough, when advice will ring hollow, when the mind, no matter how brilliant, cannot lead you home. In these seasons, silence becomes your teacher. A teacher that says nothing, yet shows you everything. A teacher that gives no answers, yet dissolves every false question. A teacher that does not fix you because you were never broken, only buried beneath noise. If you could only sit in silence long enough, you would begin to feel the edges of your identity melt. The roles you've played, the expectations you've carried, the wounds you've named yourself after all, begin to fall away. And what is left is not a void, it is not emptiness, it is fullness. The fullness of being. The stillness that speaks louder than any accomplishment ever could. This silence is not passive. It is not weak. It is the most powerful force in the universe. It creates worlds. It births stars. It transmutes pain. It dissolves fear. It reminds you of your eternal nature. And when you align with it, you stop trying to win at life. You start dancing with it. You stop trying to survive. You stop trying to protect yourself from the moment, and instead you surrender to its intelligence. The greatest truth is this. The answer is not hidden. The answer is not far. The answer is not complicated. The answer is within. It is not a formula. It is a frequency. And that frequency cannot be understood through analysis. It can only be felt through presence. The answer is not a thing to be found. It is a state to be remembered. And silence is the gateway to that remembrance. You were not sent here to perform. You were not sent here to accumulate titles. You were sent here to remember the truth of what you are. You were sent here to learn how to be not someone, but presence itself. You were sent here to know yourself, not as the identity, but as the observer of all identities. And once you know yourself in that way, you are free. Not because the world changed, but because your awareness did. Let the noise fall away. Let the urgency dissolve. Let the chasing end. Let yourself land here, now, in the sacred simplicity of silence, where nothing needs to happen for everything to be complete, where you are not becoming, you are being, where you are not achieving, you are allowing, where you are not demanding from life, you are receiving its grace. And when you emerge from silence, you do not return the same. You return lighter, clearer, more loving. Not because you gained anything, but because you remembered everything. The fog lifts, the heart opens, the mind relaxes, and the soul rejoices because you came back. You came back to yourself. And in doing so, you came back to life. The more you live in silence, the more you become aware of a deeper guidance that was never missing, only muffled. You begin to feel your intuition not as a rare occurrence, but as your native language. You begin to notice synchronicity, where once you saw coincidence, you begin to trust your own path. Not because it is guaranteed, but because it is sacred. And that trust, born of silence, becomes your anchor in a world addicted to noise. No longer do you need to chase what others chase. No longer do you need to explain what cannot be explained. You begin to live gently, yet powerfully. You begin to embody presence, not as an effort, but as your essence. You walk slower, you speak less, you listen more. You watch your own mind with compassion, and you watch others through the eyes of understanding, not judgment. This is the gift of silence. It changes how you see, not what you see. The world remains the same, yet you are different. And in that difference, everything is transformed. You begin to feel beauty in the ordinary. You begin to appreciate what you once overlooked. You see divinity not only in sunsets and temples, but in traffic lights and wrinkles, in the silence between two people who no longer need words to know they are loved. The answer you seek has never been outside your reach, but it has always been outside your noise. And now that the noise is quiet, you can see clearly again. You can feel again. You can breathe in life, not as a means to an end, but as the end itself. Each breath is a prayer. Each moment is a temple. Each act of presence is an offering. And you are the altar. Even your pain becomes different in silence. Not because it disappears, but because it loses its grip. It no longer defines you, it teaches you. It no longer owns you, it flows through you. You begin to see that even your suffering was part of the return. That even the loudest seasons of your life were nudging you back toward quiet. That your heartbreak was not a punishment, but a portal. A sacred crack through which the light could reach you again. The ego resists this truth. It wants things to be more complex, more dramatic. It wants a formula, a story, a reason to cling to its identity. But the soul only wants freedom. And freedom does not need noise. It needs awareness. It needs trust. It needs surrender. Not surrender as defeat, surrender as alignment, surrender as the courage to release what was never yours to carry. When you touch silence deeply, you realize that the self you've been defending was never who you were, that all your walls were made of thought, that all your masks were inherited roles. And in that realization, a soft peace arises, not the peace of the world, but the peace of the soul, a peace that does not depend on circumstances because it was never created by them. You no longer wait for life to be perfect before you feel peace. You bring peace to life as it is. You no longer pray for change from desperation. You pray from gratitude, knowing that even without a single external shift, you are already held, already loved, already home. And from this home, everything becomes possible. The stillness becomes your compass, not because it gives you all the answers, but because it connects you to the source that doesn't need them. You move not with urgency, but with clarity. Not with panic, but with power. Not with fear, but with faith. The world may still pull at you, but you are no longer pulled apart. You return to silence like a river returns to the ocean effortlessly, without question, because it knows where it belongs. And from that place, your very presence becomes a gift to others. You speak less, but your words carry weight. You advise less, but your energy heals. You convince no one, yet your being inspires. Because in a world that shouts, your silence becomes magnetic. In a world that performs, your authenticity becomes medicine. You no longer need to prove anything. You no longer need to earn anyone's respect. You no longer need to pretend, because silence has stripped you down to what is real. And what is real does not need to be explained. It only needs to be lived. And so you begin to live not as a seeker of answers, but as a bearer of presence. Not as someone trying to find their worth, but as someone who finally remembered they never lost it. You are not your history. You are not your habits. You are not even your name. You are the awareness that sees all of it, the consciousness behind the curtain. You are the witness, the still point, the unshakable essence that watches the waves come and go without becoming them. And the more you reside in that space, the more life opens up without force, because life recognizes itself in you. And where recognition flows, miracles do too. This is not philosophy, it is remembrance. This is not theory, it is truth, felt directly when all the distractions fall away. And what remains is not a lesser version of you, it is the real you, the radiant you, the you who never needed fixing, only uncovering, the you who has been silently waiting for you to stop running, to stop pretending, to stop performing, and just be. So sit in silence today. Not to achieve anything, but to release everything. Not to become spiritual, but to remember you already are. Let the silence cleanse you. Let it dissolve your tension. Let it hold your fear without needing to resolve it. Let it remind you that you were never abandoned, only invited. And now, finally, you've accepted. There will still be noise in the world, but you do not have to let it live in you. There will still be moments of doubt, of fear, of noise rising again, but that is okay, because now you know the way back. Now you have tasted what is real. And once you have tasted it, you cannot forget it. You can only return again and again to the place that never left. The answer you seek is in silence. And in that silence, you will not just find the answer, you will find yourself. And in finding yourself, you will discover you were the answer all along. My dear, wonderful friends, tonight I shall share with you the most powerful secret in all of creation: how to speak to yourself in a way that will completely transform your world in just 3 days. Not in 3 months, not in 3 years, but in 3 days. For you see, the power of your inner conversation is absolute, and it is the only true creative power in the universe. Now, when I tell you to talk to yourself, I am not speaking of the idle chatter that most engage in throughout their day. I speak of that inner conversation that is deliberate, conscious, and aligned with your desired state. For your inner conversation is your consciousness externalized, and your consciousness is God. Consider the words of Scripture. In the beginning was the Word. These words are not speaking of some external deity's utterance. They speak of your inner word, your inner conversation. For you are the operant power, and your inner conversation is the word that creates all things. Many of you come to me asking, Wayne, how long must I wait to see my desires manifest? And I tell you now, give yourself 3 days of proper inner conversation, and you will see your world begin to transform. For 3 is the number of completion in Scripture. And when you maintain the proper inner conversation for 3 days, you set in motion forces beyond your current understanding. Let me share with you exactly how to conduct this inner conversation. First, you must understand that your inner conversation must be from the end. You do not speak of what you want to be true. You speak as though what you desire is already true. This is the great secret that most of the world has missed. When you wake in the morning of your first day, your inner conversation must be from the state of your wish fulfilled. If you desire wealth, your inner conversation must be that of a wealthy person. If you desire health, your inner conversation must be that of a healthy person. If you desire love, your inner conversation must be that of someone who is deeply loved. But then this is crucial. Your inner conversation must feel natural. It must not be strained or forced, for feeling is the secret. And your inner conversation must be accompanied by the feeling of naturalness. Let me give you a perfect example from Scripture. When David spoke to Goliath, his inner conversation was not, I hope I can win, or I will try my best. His inner conversation was from the state of victory already achieved. This is why he could say with complete conviction, "This day will the Lord deliver thee into mine hand." Now, for these 3 days, you must guard your inner conversation as though your life depends upon it, because it does. Every time you catch yourself engaging in inner conversation that contradicts your desired state, you must immediately revise it. This is not a suggestion. This is a command if you wish to see your world transform. Consider this. Every outer conversation you have is first an inner conversation. Every relationship you have is first an inner conversation. Every circumstance in your life is first an inner conversation. Therefore, by changing your inner conversation for just 3 days, you literally change the entire substance from which your world is created. Let me tell you how to structure your inner conversation throughout these 3 days. In the morning, your first inner words must be from the state of your wish fulfilled before you open your eyes, before you move a muscle. Engage in the inner conversation of the person you wish to be. If you desire wealth, your inner conversation might be, "I am so grateful for my abundant life. Money flows to me easily and continuously. I am surrounded by prosperity." But remember, these words must not be mere affirmations. They must be spoken with the feeling of knowing that they are already true. Throughout your day, your inner conversation must maintain the same level of conviction. When challenges arise, and they will arise, your inner conversation must remain steadfast. If someone speaks of lack, your inner conversation must be of abundance. If someone speaks of illness, your inner conversation must be of health. This is where most fail in their attempt to change their world. They allow their inner conversation to be pulled into the current circumstances rather than maintaining the conversation of their desired state. But I tell you now, circumstances have no power over your inner conversation unless you give them that power. For these 3 days, you must be relentless in maintaining your new inner conversation. When you walk down the street, your inner conversation must be from your desired state. When you eat your meals, your inner conversation must be from your desired state. When you prepare for sleep, your inner conversation must be from your desired state. Let me share with you a principle that I have tested and proven countless times. Your inner conversation is the only reality. Everything else, absolutely everything, is a shadow of your inner conversation pushed out. Therefore, when you maintain the proper inner conversation for 3 days, you literally create a new world. Many of you may be thinking, "But Wayne, 3 days seems too short a time to change my entire world." Let me remind you of the story of Jonah. How long was he in the belly of the whale? 3 days. And after 3 days, he was transformed, and his world was transformed. This is not coincidence, my dear friends. This is law. 3 days of proper inner conversation is all that is required to set in motion the forces that will transform your world. But these must be 3 complete days, not 3 days of wavering between states. During these 3 days, you must guard your inner conversation, not just in your waking hours, but as you fall asleep. For the last inner conversation you have before sleep is particularly powerful. It continues to echo through your subconscious mind throughout your sleep. Therefore, as you prepare for sleep during these 3 days, your inner conversation must be perfectly aligned with your desired state. If you desire a successful business, your inner conversation might be, "I am so grateful for my thriving business. My customers are delighted with our services. Profits increase continuously." But remember, and this is crucial, your inner conversation must be accompanied by the feeling of naturalness. It must feel as natural to have this conversation as it feels to speak of what you had for breakfast. This is where the power lies, not in the words themselves, but in the feeling of naturalness that accompanies them. Let me share with you another principle. Your inner conversation creates your outer conversations. Therefore, during these 3 days, you must be particularly vigilant about your outer conversations as well. They must align with your new inner conversation. If someone asks you how you are, your response must come from your desired state. If someone speaks to you about problems or difficulties, your response must come from your desired state. Your outer conversation must be a perfect reflection of your new inner conversation. Many of you may find this challenging at first. You may be tempted to engage in conversations about current circumstances rather than your desired state. But I tell you now, this is where your power lies in maintaining your new conversation, regardless of appearances. Consider the story of Jesus walking on water. What was his inner conversation? Was it about the impossibility of walking on water? Was it about the danger of the storms? No, his inner conversation was from the state of mastery over all natural laws, and his outer world had to conform to this inner conversation. During these 3 days, you must maintain the same level of conviction in your inner conversation. You must speak to yourself as though your desired state is already your reality, not as though it will be, not as though it might be, but as though it is. Let me share with you how to handle doubts when they arise during these 3 days, and they will arise. When a doubt appears in your mind, do not fight it. Instead, immediately revise your inner conversation. If you catch yourself saying inwardly, "This isn't working," immediately revise it too. "Everything is working perfectly. My world is transforming now." This revision must be immediate and complete. You cannot allow doubt to linger in your inner conversation. For remember, your inner conversation is the only reality. Therefore, a doubting inner conversation will create a doubting outer reality. Throughout these 3 days, your inner conversation must be dominated by gratitude. Not gratitude for what you hope will come, but gratitude for what is already yours in your desired state. This gratitude must be part of your inner conversation throughout the day. When you wake in the morning, your inner conversation must be filled with gratitude. When you go about your daily activities, your inner conversation must be filled with gratitude. When you prepare for sleep, your inner conversation must be filled with gratitude. Let me share with you another principle. Your inner conversation creates your inner states, and your inner states create your outer world. Therefore, during these 3 days, your inner conversation must create and maintain the inner state of your wish fulfilled. If you desire wealth, your inner conversation must create and maintain the inner state of wealth. Consciousness. If you desire health, your inner conversation must create and maintain the inner state of health. Consciousness. If you desire love, your inner conversation must create and maintain the inner state of being loved. Many of you may be wondering what to do if you slip in your inner conversation during these 3 days. Let me be very clear. You must not condemn yourself. Instead, immediately revise the conversation. Remember, you are training yourself to maintain a new inner conversation. And like any training, it requires practice. During these 3 days, your inner conversation must be your primary focus. Every other activity must be secondary to maintaining your new inner conversation. For you are literally recreating your world through this conversation. Let me share with you how to structure your inner conversation for specific desires. If you desire a new home, your inner conversation might be, "I love living in my beautiful new home. Everything about it is perfect for me." If you desire a promotion, your inner conversation might be, "I am so grateful for my new position. It's everything I desired and more." But remember, these are not mere words. They must be accompanied by the feeling of living in that new home, the feeling of working in that new position. Fulfilling is the secret, and your inner conversation must generate the feeling of your wish fulfilled. Throughout these 3 days, your inner conversation must be specific. Vague inner conversation creates vague results. Therefore, speak to yourself with clarity about your desired state. Be specific in your inner conversation about what you are grateful for, what you are experiencing, what you are enjoying in your desired state. Let me share with you another principle. Your inner conversation creates self-concept, and your self-concept creates your world. Therefore, during these 3 days, your inner conversation must be about who you are, not just what you have. If you desire success, your inner conversation must be about being a successful person, not just about having success. If you desire abundance, your inner conversation must be about being an abundant person, not just about having money. If you desire love, your inner conversation must be about being a loved person, not just about having a relationship. During these 3 days, your inner conversation must be continuous, not in the sense of constant chatter, but in the sense of consistent alignment with your desired state. Every time you become aware of your inner conversation, it must be from your desired state. Let me share with you how to maintain this continuity. Set reminders for yourself throughout the day. Every time you look at your watch, every time you eat a meal, every time you enter a room, let these be triggers to check your inner conversation. But remember, your inner conversation must not be mechanical. It must be aligned with feeling rich with the emotion of your desired state. For it is the feeling that gives power to your inner conversation. Throughout these 3 days, your inner conversation must be sovereign. You must not allow anyone or anything to dictate your inner conversation. Not circumstances, not other people's opinions, not past experiences. Nothing must have power over your inner conversation except you. Let me share with you another principle. Your inner conversation creates your expectations, and your expectations create your experience. Therefore, during these 3 days, your inner conversation must create the highest expectations of good for yourself. Many of you may be thinking, but Wayne, what if my desired state seems impossible? Let me remind you, nothing is impossible. To your inner conversation. Your inner conversation is God in action, and to God, all things are possible. During these 3 days, your inner conversation must be about possibility, not probability. You must speak to yourself from the state of your wish fulfilled, regardless of how probable or improbable may seem to your rational mind. Let me share with you how to handle apparent failures during these 3 days. If something happens that seems to contradict your desired state, your inner conversation must remain unchanged. You must speak to yourself as though the seeming failure is actually part of the perfect unfolding of your desire. Remember, your inner conversation is creating your reality, not the other way around. Therefore, no external circumstance has the power to change your inner conversation unless you give it that power. Throughout these 3 days, your inner conversation must be your constant companion. It must be the lens through which you view every experience, the filter through which you interpret every event, the standard by which you measure every circumstance. Let me share with you another principle. Your inner conversation creates a belief system, and your belief system creates your reality. Therefore, during these 3 days, your inner conversation must consistently reinforce the beliefs that support your desired state. During these 3 days, your inner conversation must be a perfect reflection of the person you wish to be. You must speak to yourself as that person would speak. Think as that person would think. Feel as that person would feel. Let me share with you how to maintain this level of consciousness. When you catch yourself speaking from your old state, immediately ask yourself, how would I be speaking to myself if I were already the person I wish to be? Then revise your inner conversation accordingly. Throughout these 3 days, your inner conversation must be about what is not, what was, or what might be. You must speak to yourself in the present tense from the state of your wish fulfilled. This is crucial for the manifestation of your desire. Let me share with you another principle. Your inner conversation creates future, but it does so by creating your present Therefore, during these 3 days, your inner conversation must make your desired future your present reality. Many of you may be wondering what will happen after these 3 days. Let me tell you, if you have maintained the proper inner conversation for 3 days, you will have set in motion forces that must result in the manifestation of your desire. During these 3 days, your inner conversation must be your primary tool for creation. Every other method, every other technique, every other approach must be secondary to maintaining your new inner conversation. Let me share with you how to know if your inner conversation is correct. If it feels natural, if it feels real, if it feels true, even in the face of contrary evidence, then your inner conversation is correct. Throughout these 3 days, your inner conversation must be protected like a precious jewel. You must guard it against doubt, against fear, against negativity. For your inner conversation is the very substance from which your world is created. Let me share with you another principle. Your inner conversation creates a relationship with yourself, and your relationship with yourself creates all other relationships. Therefore, during these 3 days, your inner conversation must reflect the highest, most loving relationship with yourself. During these 3 days, your inner conversation must be your sacred practice. You must treat it with the same reverence that a priest treats his prayers, that a scientist treats his experiments, that an artist treats his creations. Let me share with you how to maintain this level of devotion. See your inner conversation as your direct connection to the creative power of the universe. For that is exactly what it is, your consciousness in action creating your world. Throughout these 3 days, your inner conversation must be your constant reminder of who you really are, the operant power in your world, the creator of reality, the God of your uniqueness. And that, my dear friends, is how you must talk to yourself for 3 days if you wish to transform your world. Not sometimes, not occasionally, but consistently, continuously, constantly. For your inner conversation is the Word of God in action, and it cannot return void. Remember this, your world is your inner conversation pushed out. Therefore, guard your inner conversation for these 3 days as though your life depends upon it, because it does. So what will you do with this knowledge? Will you continue with your old inner conversation, creating the same results you've always created? Or will you begin today, this moment, to maintain a new inner conversation that must create a new world? The choice is yours, but the law is absolute. Your inner conversation creates your reality. Therefore, speak to yourself for 3 days as though your desires are already fulfilled, and watch your world transform. That's the message I want to leave you tonight. Not because it's easy, but because it's true. Not because it's simple, but because it's powerful. Not because it's what you expected to hear, but because it's what you needed to hear. Remember, 3 days of proper inner conversation will transform your world every single time. And isn't that worth thinking about?